In 1910, an anthropologist tried to explain to a tribe in Papua New Guinea that sex created pregnancy. They told him he was wrong. Not confused, not primitive. Wrong. Bronislaw Malinowski had spent years living with the Trobriand people, learning their language, earning their trust. When he explained the biological connection, the elders listened carefully. Then one looked at him and said, "That is what outsiders believe. It is not what we know. And here's why that matters to you directly. For 290,000 years before farming existed, family worked completely differently than you think. Who the father was, who raised the child, what a mother was supposed to do. Almost none of it looked like what you'd call natural today, because what we call natural was invented. The Trobriand people weren't the only ones. Historians David Graeber and David Wengrow documented this across hundreds of ancient cultures. Many societies arrived at the same conclusion. Pregnancy came from spirits, from water, from dreams, from food eaten at the wrong time, not because they were primitive, because the gap between sex and birth is 9 months. Without a calendar, without records, that gap is almost too wide to connect. Wind, water, dreams, ancestral spirits, all logical conclusions from available evidence. The question isn't why they got it wrong. The question is, if nobody knew who the father was, how did they decide who was responsible for the child? If you think the answer is nobody, you'd be wrong too. For the Trobriand people, pregnancy began with the sea. A woman would wade into the water or fall asleep near the shore, and an ancestral spirit would enter her. The spirit, always a relative who had passed, chose her specifically, chose her because she was ready. When she woke up, she knew, not suspected, knew. Other cultures had their own answers. The Lek people of New Britain believed babies formed when a woman ate certain foods. The Tully River people of Australia believed a man had to dream a child into existence before it could arrive. Think about your own life for a second. You know things about your body that took science centuries to explain, because you live in it. These women did too. They were observing, concluding, building a system around what they could see. The system they built around pregnancy was more sophisticated than anyone expected, and it started with a radical idea about fathers. In at least 18 documented societies, a child could have multiple fathers, not metaphorically, legally, officially. Anthropologists Stephen Beckerman and Paul Valentine documented this in cultures of multiple fathers. Partible paternity, the belief that multiple men could contribute to the same pregnancy, was widespread and deliberate. Every man who slept with a woman during her pregnancy was considered a partial father. Every partial father had obligations: food, protection, care. The more fathers a child had, the safer that child was. Frank Marlowe documented this among the Hadza. Women sometimes had 2-3 official fathers for one child. Nobody questioned it, because the goal was never romantic exclusivity. The goal was a child that survived. Think about what that actually means. More hunters bringing meat specifically for your child. More adults watching for danger. More hands to catch the baby if the mother died. It wasn't chaos. It was the most rational insurance policy ever designed. But here's what nobody talks about. In all of this, the multiple fathers, the community responsibility, the person who actually showed up most was neither. It was the grandmother. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes at the University of Utah spent years tracking exactly who provided the most food when a Hadza woman was pregnant. Not the husband, not the fathers, the mother's mother. The grandmother dug more tubers, gathered more calories, returned more food to camp. Specifically, consistently, whenever her daughter was pregnant or nursing. This finding forced Hawkes to ask a question biology had never answered. Why do human women live so long after menopause? Every other primate reproduces until it dies. We don't. Because a grandmother who stops having her own children and feeds her grandchildren instead produces more surviving descendants than one who keeps trying. She wasn't retired. She was the infrastructure the whole system ran on. When you call your mother to help with your kids, you're running a program 300,000 years old. It was never optional. It was survival. When the moment came, it often came alone. Anthropologist Marjorie Shostak spent years with the Kung San of the Kalahari, recording the life of a woman named Nisa in extraordinary detail. Nisa described giving birth alone, not because no one cared, because that was simply how it was done. She walked away from camp when contractions started, found soft ground, some shelter, no one with her. When the baby came, she caught it herself, cut the cord with a piece of stone she had carried for this moment, wrapped the child against her body, then walked back to camp. My body knew what to do, she said. It had always known. Your body was built for this too. Wenda Trevathan's research confirms that women who walk 5 to 8 miles daily, the way hunter-gatherers did, keep the pelvis flexible and the baby positioned correctly. Labor, for a body used the way it was designed, was faster and less complicated than what most modern women experience. The danger wasn't the birth. The danger was everything that came after. The baby arrived and immediately stopped belonging only to its mother. Anthropologist Sarah Hrdy spent decades asking one question: why do human babies make strangers want to hold them? Every other primate infant clings to its mother and rejects everyone else. Touch a chimpanzee baby and the mother panics. A human baby makes eye contact with a stranger across a room and reaches out its arms. That's not cute. That's a survival signal, engineered by 300,000 years of evolution, because human infants needed multiple caregivers to survive. Hrdy called us cooperative breeders. The only primate designed from birth to be raised by more than one person. Even nursing was shared. Colostrum, the first milk, was sometimes considered dangerous in certain cultures. Other women in camp took turns feeding the newborn for the first few days. The baby had multiple mothers before it had a name. You feel this instinct right now. The pull toward a baby in a room, even a stranger's, the feeling that you should help, should hold, should do something. That's not sentiment. That's ancient software still running. Then farming arrived. And in one generation, everything changed. When people started growing food, they needed land. Land needed to be passed down. And passing down land required knowing, with absolute certainty, who a man's children were. Suddenly, one father wasn't just a preference. It was a legal necessity. Partible paternity didn't disappear because people finally learned biology. It disappeared because property needed a single undisputed heir, the traditional family. One mother, one father, children who belong to them alone isn't ancient. It's an invention of agriculture. It's maybe 10,000 years old. For the 290,000 years before that, the arrangement looked completely different. Multiple fathers, grandmothers as the real providers. Babies passed between many sets of arms. Pregnancy as a community event from the first day. We didn't discover the nuclear family. We built it because we needed somewhere to put the inheritance, and then we called it natural. Go back to the elder in the Trobriand Islands. Malinowski pushed him one last time, asked why it didn't matter who the biological father was. The elder looked at him for a moment. We do not need to know who made the child. We only need to know who will take care of it. That might be the most honest definition of parenthood ever spoken. Not biology. Not ownership, not a name on the document, just who shows up. Your body still carries all of it. The instinct to reach for someone else's baby, the pull toward your mother when something hard is coming, the village you build, without thinking, when something important is about to happen. None of that is modern. None of that is accidental. It's 300,000 years of one species learning that no one does this alone. And somehow, even now, even after 10,000 years of being told the nuclear family is the natural way, we still know it.